Hello, welcome to the sixth session of the third Global Conference of the Sustainable Food Systems program. My name is Ulf Jekyll. I work with the Federal Ministry for the Environment in Germany, and I'm co-leading the Consumer Information Program under the One Planet Network. We got a long tradition of the cooperation of these two programs, the Sustainable Food Systems Program and the Consumer Information Program. We had a side event at UNEA 4, for example, in Nairobi. We had a session at the second global conference of the food systems in Costa Rica, and we got cooperation projects. My ministry is also supporting this conference and provides capacity to the Sustainable Food Systems programs. Why are we doing that? Reliable information is key when you want to behave sustainably. You have to know what is sustainable and what is not so sustainable. That is the case for the consumer, of course, but not only. Also restaurant managers, canteen managers, and sometimes also food producers and retailers have to know if they want their business become more sustainable. There's an enormous amount of information out there, as you all know, hundreds of labels addressing environmental or social aspects or both on food production. But which is reliable? Which claim is just greenwashing? How can I get transparency of the food chain? Is the regional choice better than the organic one? All kinds of questions are appearing regarding the choice of food every day. And yes, this is an everyday issue, and therefore it is particularly relevant in the food area. Knowing what is sustainable and what not is relevant to all consumption areas, of course, but as you are choosing your food every day, it's particularly relevant for the food area. And it's not only relevant for the consumer, as I said, but also it's relevant for restaurant managers, canteen managers, retailers in their offering, and if they want to do it more sustainably. Addressing the reliability issue of the information is one of the key issues the Consumer Information Program has as its task. Our program has developed guidelines for reliable information on sustainability issues. There are fundamental principles like accountability, transparency, reliability, relevance, and so on. And they are aspirational, more nice to have principles like long-term impact and cooperation and innovation. Several international resolutions have promoted the guidelines already, and so there are guidelines with an international United Nations ownership. Our Consumer Information Program also works on the labeling issue and how to identify and promote most reliable ISO Type 1 labels. We also, and this is quite a recent thing, address the biodiversity issue in a new working group where we look at the impacts of our consumption on biodiversity and ecosystem services and how can we communicate that. And with the support of our international climate initiatives, we do projects also together with the Sustainable Food Systems programs. One of the projects will be presented here. And we are running up to a start of a new project, which will start beginning of next year. Together with the WWF as a main partner, we will work on a database on the impacts of food components and dishes based on nutrition needs, addressing consumers in this project, but also canteen, restaurant and retail management. And this project has a global scale, and communication and globally usable communication tool shall be developed an easy to understand and use tool for all addressed groups. Having said that, I will turn now to my panelists here. We got 4 panelists, and I will present them shortly when it's their turn. They will present their activities before we enter after their presentation into a short question and answer session. My first panelist I'd like to welcome is Daniela Acuña. She is a Sustainable Production Officer in the Ministry of Agriculture in Chile, and she is working at the Department of Sustainability and Climate Change in the Bureau of Agricultural Studies and Policies of the Chilean Ministry of Agriculture, and she is responsible for the sustainable food systems area in the National Program for Sustainable Consumption and Production in Chile. Daniela, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Just a minute, please. And yes. I hope everyone can see the presentation, yes? Okay, well, first I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to participate in this panel. As Ulf already mentioned, I work in the Bureau of Agricultural Policies and Studies of the Ministry of Agriculture of Chile, and we are part of the Chilean National Committee for Sustainable Production and Consumption. And I'm going to share some of the experiences we have done in terms of engaging consumers towards sustainable food systems. And to start, I would like to highlight that historically, the Ministry of Agriculture has been distant from working with consumers. Our focus of work has been agricultural production and manufacture and processing. But in recent years, there has been a new approach that has broadened the scope of the way we develop agricultural policies. And we have learned that we need to connect with retail and consumers, and we are trying to involve them in the different activities that we're doing. However, it's a difficult task. It's a challenge, and in particular in Chile, we don't have many consumers organizations, so that's also a difficulty. And the consumers organizations that are working in Chile, their main focus is not food systems. So in recent years, we have developed some initiatives I will share with you now, and in particular, they are regarding how to avoid food waste. And so how do we engage with consumers? Mainly through providing useful information and also through awareness-raising campaigns. And well, the first initiative I want to show you, it's this guide that we developed for consumers in order to prevent and reduce food waste. This guide was developed together with 2 organizations, with 5 a Day. That's an organization that promotes good eating habits through the implementation of the 5 a Day program, which emphasizes on the consumption of 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day in the context of a healthy living. And the other partner in this project was the Institute of Nutrition and Food Technology of the University of Chile. So this booklet was distributed to students, housewives, and general public in different activities that involve these organizations. Additionally, it was available in the webpage of the different organizations to download it. And it was very well received by the public, by consumers, because it was very practical, with very practical recommendations. Some of the information was some general information about food loss and waste, but also information on the nutritional value of food waste, recommendations of actions to prevent and reduce food waste at home, and also cooking recipes to rescue food, to avoid waste, and finally, how to improve or how to implement organic waste recycling at home. So, well, sorry. And second initiative I want to show you is this campaign, Save the Food, or Salvemos la Comida in Spanish. And this campaign was specifically about awareness raising in consumers. We developed this campaign by the National Committee for Preventing and Reducing Food Loss and Waste, FAO, and Unilever. So it was also a partnership. The Food Loss and Waste Committee is a public-private committee with also participation of academia and civil society. And the technical secretariat of this committee is carried out by my office. And it's an instance of coordination of activities on 3 areas: research and information, governance, and awareness raising and communication. So in line with this last area of the awareness raising and communication, we have the opportunity to develop this campaign, the Salvemos la Comida, Save the Food campaign, with FAO and Unilever, as I already mentioned. And the main idea was to develop a public-private collaboration project to raise awareness in consumers of the volumes, effects, and impacts of food loss and waste, and paying attention to the process of buying, storing, and preparing food. The project has 4 main pillars. The first one is information, then awareness raising, empowerment, and collaboration. So regarding information, the idea was to provide information to consumers regarding the impacts of food loss and waste, in order to raise awareness on consumers of their role in preventing and reducing food waste, and all of this in order to empower them, so consumers could be like the main actors in order to prevent food waste through the 4 C's that we develop. This is in Spanish. So the first C is to buy, comprar. So the main message was buy only what you need, make a list and try to follow it. The second C is about like the consumption, and it's the idea, the main message is calculate the size of your plate and don't overdo it. The third C was regarding storage, in Spanish, conservación. So the message was store your food in a suitable way that preserve the freshness and avoid waste. And the fourth C was the conversion, how to turn leftover food into lunch or dinner for the next day. So this is a collaborative project. Since all actors are interested can be part of this campaign. It's an unbranded space where public organizations, companies, NGOs, and people can be part of it. It's think as a social network campaign, and we launched it last Christmas with this post with the message of avoiding food waste in different forms and in a very clear and direct way, so consumers can understand it. Currently, this campaign is in standby because of the pandemic, and we hope to resume it soon because it's very needful. We need to have this kind of campaigns. And well, I think I'm still in time, so I would like to close my presentation just with two messages. For us in the Ministry of Agriculture of Chile, consumer engagement is still a challenge. It's not part of what we usually do, and so partnership with other organizations is key, as I already mentioned. And we think that even though engaging consumers is a challenge, it also represents an opportunity to transition towards a sustainable food system. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Very short, but I think in the questions I can go deep into it.
Thank you very much, Daniela, and thank you for showing what is going on in Chile, also in your plan. Food waste is a general issue and very important. May I let you all know that you are already have the possibility to send in questions or comments via the chat functions, which we will then turn to after the 4 presentations. The next presenter is Plai Pirom. He is a project manager at WWF in Thailand since 2017. The project he will talk about is seeking to establish sustainable consumption and production in the agri-food sector in Thailand. And I can proudly say that we are supporting that project, and happy that Plai is presenting here. Plai, please, you have the floor. Tell us more about the project.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Ulf, and it's a pleasure for me to being here. So let me share my screen. Do you all see my screen now? Okay, so let me start. From the questions of how to address food system through consumers, therefore, I would like to share a real case study, approaches, outputs, and lessons learned from the 3 years implemented project funded by IKI BMU called Establish Sustainable Consumption and Production. The strategy of this project is to engage as many people within the supply chain to change behavior, and therefore the topic of my presentation is to demonstrate how we address food system through integrating demand and supply sides in connecting producers to consumers, and together triggering a change in the retail sector towards a sustainable food system. So we begin with the context of unsustainable food system. It is the fact that Thailand as a global food production hub is driven by an increase in forest land conversion to agriculture. The food production comes with the social and environmental cost. And our food system is described as unsustainable practice, deforestation, ecosystem service trade-off, and externalities, ecosystem degradation. Our food system, in particular, the local food production system, is predominantly transformed into monoculture, agrochemical practices, which is leading to the crumbling of the local economies and degradation of food system. This is called the true cost of food. So given that the agricultural sector, the production and consumption of food is among the major contributors to global warming and impacts on the ecosystem, therefore it can potentially mitigate through the promotion and integration of SCP, Sustainable Consumption and Production principles, into government policies, business decisions, and consumer practices. To mobilize consumers, we deploy 2 strategies: visualizing the problems to create the sense of urgency, and another strategy is direct engagement with consumers and producers to implement across the food system from production side to market transformation and towards the consumption side. In creating the sense of urgency in Thailand, maize production, which is a key ingredient for animal feed, is a perfect case to show how food production, especially meat, has come to the cost of deforestation, degradation of ecosystem. On the food production side, we establish a solution model that will contribute to the current and future food security and well-being of smallholders farmers while increasing forest restoration, preserving farmlands biodiversity, and limiting the adverse effect on the environment through the development of a sustainable value chain to grow diversified local varieties and perennial crops. Organic products from the landscape will be sold to local food and retail markets, generating income to the community and enhancing livelihood. So before we start off the consumer campaign, consumer survey has been conducted understanding consumers' perception and behavior. In 2018, the survey study recommends that the communication campaign strategy shall focus on increased consumer information and accessibility about SCP information for further engagement. And taking motivational factors in the consumer food choice into consideration, consumer demands and prefer to pay more for markets that sell organic food and produce with clear origin labeling. In 2020, we picked up another interesting research called Dream Food. Access consumers' opinion, what is dream food? The result found that the input plus process play a stronger role in dream food definition than the food itself. Eating dream food not only benefits to good health, but also the positive impact on climate too. No key brands owns the dream food icon. And the last, mother-made food base defines try dream food. This implies that increasing consumers are taking more importance on sustainability issue as well as health, and home cooking with good selected ingredients seem to be the best option for everyday food choice. Based on this insight, there are opportunities for empowering consumers to take action towards achieving a sustainable food system for the planet's health. Our campaign Eat Better was launched as an awareness-raising initiative to ramp up social momentum towards a sustainable food system through the promotion of responsible consumption behavior and attitude, how we eat, purchase, and manage, and understand to need to adopt green eating lifestyle. Alongside, we use farmers' market as a tool to promote the responsible consumption patterns into urban consumers. This makes consumers to give thought to the value of food and its production. Farmers' markets can be a catalyzer for food system sustainability. It brings consumer and producers to meet each other and being connected. Consumers have direct experience to ask questions, learn and understand, getting real information about food production through the farmers market. For example, this farmers market we piloted in 2018 called Chai Talat. In Thai word means food shopping. During the past few years, more and more consumers are drawn to farmers and local markets due to an increasing demand for natural organic food and local products. This upward trend depicts a rising consciousness among consumers who are connected with not just the way they eat or consume, but how it has been produced and where. This locally produced market differentiation strategy results in a higher value gains for farmers while meeting the demand for healthier foods, which in turn can drive the adaptation of environmentally sound farming practices. Here, eventually, there has been a trickling change in the retail sector too. Central Group, one of the largest retail conglomerates in the region, has partnered with the project, being influenced as a part of market transformation initiative. Pinchai Market from Central Retail was launched in 2019, last year. This farmers market is a key part of their CSV or creating share value strategy. It provides an opportunity for local farmers to merchandise their outputs, selling their fruits and vegetables along with other provincial goods in the area of Central Retail outlets. This allows both consumers and farmers to meet and discuss their thoughts with new ideas utilized to improve the product development. High quality food and products are in this way supplied to consumers and stable income is provided for the farmers. Job creation is a part of development improvement of Thai farmers' living standards. During this year, 23 Jingchai farmers market outlets were opened, recorded 3,163 farmers in 517 sub-districts taking part, earning the total revenue of 250 million baht, average 3 times more income for farmers. These central retails aim to expand these markets to other provinces throughout the country. This is how consumer information is implemented in the modern retail store as well as traceability. So I would like to make my conclusion remark here in the last slide. There are huge opportunities to produce more food in a way that works with nature. not against it. Consumer preference and demands have direct influence on business and government decisions, leading to more sustainable products, innovations, and policies. Many consumers are still lacking of understanding on how ecosystem degradation is related to their food choices. But there is an ongoing improvement where technology and consumers' information have been playing a key role. There is a growing importance of consumers' information. This demand is increasingly made by both consumer and also the retail sector, who is integrating consumers' information into their marketing and sustainability strategies. Farmer markets is regarded as an efficient way to create awareness towards the social, environmental, and health benefits. With the advent of digital technologies, there is an emerging omni-channel retailing, which is an integrated approach, wherein shoppers are provided with unified experiences across offline and online channels. Retailers are striving to build relatable marketing campaigns, friendly customer service rewards, and personalized shopping suggestions that can help create an amazing omnichannel experience, while at the same time could be a tool for consumer to be informed about the product's information to make a responsible choice of consumption. So thank you very much. I end my presentation here.
Thank you very much, Plai, and it was a very impressive presentation on how transparency in the food supply chain is needed and is possible, and also generating business for the farmers. And the cooperation of a company, a retail company, is also very crucial to that. And having said that, I turn to my next panelist. He is Andre Nell. He's a general manager sustainability at Pick n Pay, which is one of the largest retailers in Africa for food, clothing, and general merchandise. So, Andre, please tell us, how is Pick n Pay, and how are you approaching the issue of consumer information and on food issues? Andre, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of what we do. And I've already learned such a lot from just this time we spent together. Perhaps just to start, so everyone can take a breath and look at the beautiful country, South Africa. Picture of our indigenous fynbos. It's a fine leaf in English. And that's what God gave to us to protect in our beautiful country. At Pick n Pay, maybe just quick background so you know where I'm working. We're at the southern tip of Africa. It's one of the largest retailers in Africa. Several thousand stores, in rands, 89.3 billion turnover. So it's a big company. We've got 90,000 employees. And in terms of the character of the company, it's very much the value-based organization that started as a family business more than 50 years ago. Perhaps in terms of food systems, of course, very important to think that it is all very much connected. And for us as a retailer, let's just get that back up for you. For us as a retailer, before we can address the issue of consumers, it was important for us to actually integrate this thinking around food systems within the business. So our strategy around this is specific to 5 areas, which we've aligned to the United Nations SDGs, focusing on healthy living, environmental responsibility, and there you can think about things like food waste, which the earlier speaker from Chile spoke about, packaging, all of these things that are completely not separate. Then focus on an inclusive supply chain in terms of bringing ethical products to our consumers. Advancing employee opportunities, certainly that people working in your stores become ambassadors and knowledgeable about this area. And then lastly, in terms of doing good in your local community, bringing food to people that are in need. So I've just highlighted some of the ways that we are doing this. Our program is called People and Planet. Of course, we call Pick n Pay or PNP. So that's where People and Planet comes from. We're partnering with a range of stakeholders in terms of delivering a better service, better food, a better quality of life to our customers and our other stakeholders. Healthy living, being in Africa is a very important point. We've got many issues in terms of health, access to medicine, diabetes, obesity. So certainly as a retailer, it's our responsibility to bring as healthy as possible food to our customers. Interesting things that we do for kids, we provide a free fruit if they're in our stores. And then also providing lots of information in our stores to customers. We've got specific ranges that focuses on specific health aspects, and there's clear signage in the stores to indicate that to customers. Certainly you need to view your stores as one of your communication channels, because there's so much contact that customers have with product and therefore with food systems in our stores. So we use on-product communication. We've got television screens in the stores. We've got the normal sort of standard posters and the point of sale material. And as well as using things like in-store radio to do communication around food and healthy eating, healthy living. In terms of our environmental projects related to food systems, it's also a way in terms of packaging those, and they are very diverse. I mean, I did mention the work in terms of, for example, 10, 20, 30 with WRI in terms of food waste reductions. But it's always important to bring that back to the consumer because they visit the store and then they might go home. They don't get the opportunity to see the factory where you're doing all the good work or to visit the farms. So for us, responsible shopping starts at the source. So that's where we source from. But then also to bring that communication into something that customers can interact with at stores and that is affordable, because food is expensive. So that's a key deliverable for us in terms of providing healthy food that's affordable as well. In terms of bringing in the environmental component to that, for example, in something simple like a reusable bag, we've got the cheapest reusable bag in South Africa. It would be a few cents in dollars because the exchange rate is so mean to us. And with that bag, then we bring the story of why packaging and plastic reductions are important. How does that impact on the food that you eat? To make it real to customers in a way that they don't need to go find the information, we bring it to them. Important working with our suppliers, a lot of focus in terms of small suppliers, enabling them, giving them access to this big retail world. And as part of that education and that guidance that we offer to our small suppliers, education in terms of food systems, sustainability, basic things in terms of soil quality, water, what goes into the product, how it should get communicated, is all sort of the framework through which we bring small suppliers onto the big retail format. So long before they end up in the distribution centers, they've gone through a whole process of several years of education that enables them then to compete to some of the big commercial international companies. And also lastly, in terms of sourcing, we source as much as possible locally. I mean, it's a developing country. We source more than 90%, 95% of our produce, for example, is locally sourced. We were the first retailer in Africa to make a commitment in terms of stocking only sustainably sourced seafood, both in our own products and that of branded products. So any supplier with any seafood product, whether it's fresh, frozen, in tins, that's the way that we increase the reach of having a more sustainable food system around our stores. Education certainly extremely important. So we've got a Pick n Pay school club. Education, I know everywhere in the world, is a big issue. South Africa, it's a huge challenge. The school club in Pick n Pay is the biggest educational platform in South Africa, probably in Africa, but I won't say that. We reach almost 6 million learners, teachers, guardians. We supply 40 million tons of educational content. And why that's relevant is you need to start educating kids very, very early around what food is, what food systems are, where their food comes from, and how to not waste food. And then I'm going to in a way that's actually not very sustainable, but due to COVID, our country, as many of yours are, went through a really tough time and continue to do so. So we launched a specific initiative called Feed the Nation, and maybe it's a challenge in other countries to ask your local retailer why they're not doing something like this. For us, it all started with a bit of soap. In fact, it was just under 800,000 bars of soap that we distributed to kids in schools to teach them about hygiene, about how to prevent the virus. And from there, I'm going to go quite quickly because I know my time is tight. Then in April, we actually launched the program called Feed the Nation. In food systems and in food relief, partners are the beginning and the end. So Pick n Pay, essentially, we're just a conduit for this. Any retailer can be the conduit. We've got stores, we've got people working in stores, we've got distribution centers, we've got food, we've got many suppliers. And if you bring all of that together, then in a fairly short amount of time, you can raise a lot of money and a lot of food. So far we've raised, and I've converted it to dollars, it's $6.5 million. We've distributed 23 million meals to people in need. That's a lot of meals. We've supported more than 3,000 child-headed households. And as I said, this is not a sustainable project, but it's something that you need to take into consideration in your food systems, because there are so many people going into dire hunger now due to COVID. And the way that we've approached it is, as I said, through partners. We do it at cost, which means we use our own resources. During COVID, in South Africa had a very strange lockdown rules. Certain products couldn't be sold. It ranged from liquor to alcohol to baby clothes to certain types of clothing. So huge areas in our stores often had to be sort of cordoned off and you couldn't use them. So what we did is we used those areas then to pack the food. So use what you've got available to get food to people. We do this through almost more than 1,000 stores throughout our country. Maybe just a quick to finish up before I get kicked off. How do we involve the customers in this? There's opportunities for customers to nominate organizations and areas that are in need of food. There's a lot of communication in our stores in terms of how customers can assist, whether that be financially or through donating food. And working in sustainability, of course. We're trying to do this in as much a sustainable way as possible. So far, we've used 300,000 bags for distributing food. And that's 600,500 ml soft drink bottles that we've recycled. And that's the way that we are trying to help to feed the nation. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Andre, and showing us what activities your company is doing, a huge range of activities. So that was very good to see, and could also be seen that the things are maybe different in Africa from other regions in the world. But there is no one size fits all, of course, on consumer information on food systems. So having said that, I turn to my last but not least panelist, Daniel Venet. He is director and founder of the Better Buying Lab and Cool Food Pledge at the World Resources Institute. Daniel, please, you have the floor, and may I remind you to be very strict on time, because we just got approximately 10 minutes left in our session. Thank you.
Sure thing. And do tell me if I'm not presenting. Pleasure to see you all. My name's Daniel Venet, and I'm at the World Resources Institute, and we're a large global research agency that's not for profit. Now, when we've been thinking over the years about how we address food systems through consumers, one of the critical areas for intervention that we've identified is shifting diets. In particular, shifting consumers' diets in high meat-eating nations away from eating high amounts of meat, especially beef and lamb, towards more plants. And we think this is a really important solution, especially when thinking about the sustainability of food, because as this chart here shows, we know that beef and lamb have significantly more greenhouse gas emissions per gram of protein than, say, plants does. In fact, beef has 20 times the amount than, say, beans do. And actually, if we can transition people's diets towards containing less meat and more plants, so not necessarily vegan or vegetarian, just changing the proportions and having plant-rich food, it would be a huge win, not only for health, but also critically sustainability. It would save about 3 to 5 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions a year. That's massive. But also it would help us feed the 10 billion people that we need by 2050 without driving any further deforestation. So a huge win. But I suppose this idea of getting folks to eat more fruit and veg isn't a new one. This has been an effort that have been, admittedly not necessarily in the name of sustainability, but in the name of health, something that folks have tried to do over the years. And there's been various education and information campaigns to try and engage consumers. But what's interesting is when you look at the impact of these efforts, typically they've been quite modest. In particular, I saw a study a little while ago from Wales in the UK that tried to educate consumers about 5 a day. And over a number of years, they actually found that at the end of the campaign, people in Wales were actually eating less vegetables than when they started. So giving information and education on their own is helpful, but actually isn't terribly effective at driving change. And so at the World Resources Institute, we took a step back a couple of years ago and thought, well, what does the science tell us about how people make decisions, especially how they make decisions when they're shopping? And we have a team of behavioral scientists on a project called the Better Buying Lab. And basically, there's one model that we found particularly helpful, which is the System 1 and System 2 decision-making model by Daniel Kahneman, which tells us that when we make decisions, we typically use one of the 2 decision modes. System 1, which is when we make decisions very quick, very fast, they're almost automatic. So if you think about, when you're tying your shoelaces, you're using your System 1. Whereas System 2 is when we're making a lot more analytical, slow, and effortful decisions, when we're learning something new and we have to really concentrate. So think about when you're learning to drive for the very first time. Now, this is an important model because actually when we're shopping, we typically rely much more on System 1. And that's because in a shopping environment, especially in a retail store, there may be about 30 to 40,000 different choices that we can make. And if we went into that store and made a very slow, deliberate, effortful decision-making process, well, we'd be there for hours and we'd be kind of mentally overwhelmed. So that we know that when people are shopping, either in a store or in a restaurant, typically they don't really consider education and information as a key tool in their decision-making. So within the context of this, what we sense is that we really need a revolution of ideas, a revolution of solutions that are really founded in how people actually make decisions when buying. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, we've done loads of behavioral studies into this topic. But one of our most interesting pieces of research was this here, that we actually have launched a playbook where we've looked at about 4,000 different academic papers focused on how people make decisions, specifically around food and in a food service, so hospitality setting. And what we did was we actually identified that there's 57 different strategies or types of intervention that you can use to get people to choose more sustainable food in a restaurant. We then interviewed 70 people from across the food service. And from that, we identified that there's about 20 that are super effective. Now, 1 or 2 of these are about giving education and information, but actually it's much more important that we change the product. We get the products placed in front of consumers. We increase availability. We make the presentation a lot more compelling, the price right, and really strong promotion. So very much echoing Andre's point about the store as a critical area for change. We've then since done a series of experiments diving into these interventions, and just looking at presentation, we've learned that actually just changing the name of food can be a very powerful solution. For example, we know that if you call something vegan or vegetarian, you typically halve the number of people that use it. If you use evocative language that inspires people about the taste and how satiated and full they'll feel, typically we can increase sales by 70% of plant-based foods. So great, all very well. Lots of really interesting research, and please look at our website, betterbuyinglab.org, to find that all. But what we've been trying to do, definitely in the spirit also of the UN Food System Summit, is think about, well, how do we change this into a solution? How do we use this knowledge to change the game? So we've launched an initiative called Cool Food Pledge, along with a series of other NGOs. And basically, we get organizations from hotels and restaurants to universities, schools, hospitals, workplace cafeterias to commit to a science-based target for cutting their greenhouse gas emissions. And then we take all that knowledge and insight that I just shared with you and help them develop a plan for achieving that through shifting from meat towards plants. Here's a range of companies, range from IKEA, Hilton, Harvard University, through to Nestle and Morgan Stanley. And we've only been going a year, but in that first year, we've already achieved our annual reduction target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the food these organizations serve by about 3%, and relative, so per calorie, by 6%. What's really interesting is when you look into the data of why that reduction has happened, it's because indeed we've been able to cause a reduction in meat, especially that of beef and lamb, and a growth in the growth in the consumption of plant-based food. So Cool Food is about a year old. Already, we've just got shy of 1 billion meals underneath the program. And annually, the program is saving about 1 million tons of CO2, which is equivalent to the tailpipe emission of 700,000 cars on the road. And so just to end, I'd say that, if we really want to change consumer habits, it's critical that we found that in behavioral science. Education and information is important, but it's the base of the pyramid. And really from that, we need to transform shopping environments, consumer education, motivation, and the product. And Cool Food showing us that when you do that, you can get results very quickly. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Daniel. And thank you for giving an overview also for the latest science issues on consumer information on food. Unfortunately, we are quite advanced with the time, so there's no real chance to do some Q&A now. But I've seen through the chat function there was also some exchange already with the panelists. I can also ensure you that the slides of Pirom will be made available to you. There were technical problems in sharing his screen. Let me just wrap up and just summarize two issues maybe. How to communicate was an important issue. On product communication is important. Relation to health was important, and of course transparency is a very important issue on the communication. And what issues are relevant? Food waste was presented by all the panelists as a very important issue, and you can tell that the last year's food waste has grown tremendously in nearly all parts of the world as an issue to be addressed. The sourcing and transparency is important. The packaging of course, and last but not least, education is an important thing. Having said that, I thank you for your attention, and I close session number 6. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next session. Thank you.